Got everybody. We are here for this councillor briefing on the Golden Mile, and welcome Sarah to Wellington City Council, and I'll pass over to Siobhan to
Kia ora tātou.
quick talk.
Thanks, Tam. So today's briefing, next week on the 29th of June, you'll be receiving 3 papers on Let's Get Welly Moving. One will be around the notice to motion, the other 2 will be, the first one will be budget approval for Golden Mile and Thorn and Quay Hut Road, and then the traffic resolutions and design approval as well. So this presentation relates to the latter 2 papers, so we just want to give you an overview of what's going to be in those 2 papers and provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. So we have the Programme Director, Sarah Gardner, here to present. She'll introduce some of her team, and she's got more of a team at the back as well. Sarah has just recovered from a very nasty bout of flu, so I've been warned her voice may give out, at which point I'm sure someone will sweep in to continue the presentation. So we're aiming for a presentation for about 30 minutes and then 30 minutes for questions.
But any shorter would be much appreciated in terms of the presentation, so we can ask lots of questions. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you. It's a privilege to be here today to speak with you again. The purpose of our presentation is to ensure that you have the information that you feel you need to understand the Golden Mile project, the benefits and the costs of that project, and also of the Thorn and Quay Hut Road project. We also want to make sure that you have that you have all of the opportunity that you need to ask us questions, and we'll do everything we can to help. If it be that there's something we can't answer, we will make sure that we come back to you as soon as possible, and we want to be as transparent as possible today. So anything that you need, we're very happy to assist with. First of all, I'll just introduce the people around me. So I have Selwyn Blackmore, who some of you met with Friday's workshop on benefits. I also have Rowan beside me. Rowan is able to help us if we have any questions about bus stops and other things. We also have Sean Jami. So Sean is online. Sean's recently joined us from 8 years of leading civil works projects in the Canterbury Rebuild, 6 years of which he was the project director and lead for the Avon River Precinct, and also more recently the South Frame Laneways Programme of Works. We also have a number of other officers from the programme, Let's Get Wellington Moving. We also have some Metlink team members online, so David Boyd, who's the Customer Experience Manager and lead public transport person for Greater Wellington. We have our partner lead, Dave Hum, who is here from Greater Wellington, and Alex Campbell, who's the Principal Advisor, Network Design for Greater Wellington. There are others I haven't introduced, but are available and have particular specialities or skills that may help you today if we need to dig into those things. So hopefully that will be useful. So our presentation today, a little bit of a recap, then talking about Golden Mile revitalisation, and then talking about Thorn and Quay. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so just recapping. I know that you're all familiar with our program vision, but it's worth sometimes having a look at again, just to refresh our memories. So the program vision at the moment is a great harbour city, accessible to all with attractive places, shared streets and efficient local and regional journeys. And we'll talk today about the part of the vision where we are looking to move more people with fewer vehicles. We also understand that change is needed for our city. We have a projection of 50 to 80,000 more people coming to the city over the next 30 years. We know that there are challenges around housing availability. You have declared a climate emergency, and I'll talk about that a little later. Our roads, trains and buses are nearing capacity at peak times, and we have some resilience and safety challenges. So the program objectives, which you will recall, there was extensive work done on the weighting of these. The one that has the greatest weighting is reducing carbon emissions and increasing mode shift by reducing reliance on private vehicles. But of course, our objectives also look at urban amenity and enabling urban development, providing for efficient and reliable access for users, improving safety for all users, and being adaptable to disruption and future uncertainty. So again, I know you are familiar with this, so just to recap, the projects we're talking about today sit inside the transitional program. They were what were previously called 3-year projects. They obviously are not the only 3-year projects. We've had the Safer Speeds work that the program has done, and I know Wellington City has its own work on Safer Speeds. We've also delivered the Cobham Drive crossing and Safer Speeds on State Highway 1 east of Mount Victoria. And as you'll be aware, we've already commenced work on the roundabout for what is phase 1 of Thorndon Quay and Hutt Road, so that's the Aotea Quay roundabout. Inside of the transitional program, the people-friendly city streets work is also included, and that's improvements to bus reliability and for people walking and on bikes, and to provide options between suburban centres and the central city for people to get around without relying on a car. Excuse me. And I know you're familiar with the transformational program, which we're not discussing today, which is the Mass Rapid Transit proposal, the Basin Reserve changes, the Mount Victoria Tunnel, with lanes dedicated for public transport and walking and cycling, and the Smarter Transport Network, including travel demand management. Okay, so just in terms of outcomes, the outcomes for the city and region for these projects are important. They will prepare the city and the region for future growth, make the city a better place to be, and provide options for people to get around without using their car. They support mode shift and help to move more people with fewer vehicles, and they help reduce carbon emissions as we work towards becoming a net zero carbon capital by 2030. So just noting there that you have your Te Atakura First to Zero strategy to reduce the city's gross emissions by 57% by 2030 and becoming net zero by 2050. And so in terms of the Golden Mile, we understand that the proposal will assist with reducing carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide and PM10 emissions. And that's done through the improvements to public transport and the active mode infrastructure, removing private vehicle access and on-street parking from the Golden Mile, and is expected to make the bus and the active mode network more attractive and encourage people to switch from their private motor vehicles to more sustainable modes. So we note that the preferred option is expected to generate about $17 million net present value in emission reduction benefits and remove 5.3 tonnes of carbon monoxide, 2.8 tonnes of carbon dioxide, 0.5 tonnes of nitrous oxide, and 3.8 tonnes of PM10 emissions by 2038. For Thorndon Quay Hutt Road, the preferred option is expected to reduce those same contaminants. And that is, again, by improving public transport and active mode infrastructure and restricting access for private vehicles. So the preferred option is expected to make the bus and active mode network more efficient, attractive, and encourage people to switch from their private motor vehicles. It is noted that the preferred option is expected to generate about $2 million worth of emission reduction benefits at net present value for the Thorndon Quay Hutt Road proposal. Just referring to the slide now, you can also see that these projects particularly, but the program overall, also contributes to a number of other Wellington City-based policies and plans that you have decided and we are implementing. So now I'll just talk a little about the Golden Mile revitalisation, which is here. And just recap very quickly for you the vision for that. So you will be familiar with the vision, connecting people across the central city with a reliable transport system that is in balance with an attractive pedestrian environment. So it does balance the transport function with the place value inside of this Golden Mile project. And we recognise that the Golden Mile is the heart of Wellington City, running from Courtenay Place through to Lambton Quay. It's vital to the city's transport network, the success of the local economy, work, livability and a sense of place. It does have the highest pedestrian count in New Zealand and forms part of the route for all of our core bus services. So on Lambton Quay on any given day, you will see 29,000 pedestrians, 28,000 people in buses, 6,100 private vehicles and 500 people on bikes. So we know that around 70,000 people travel on Lambton Quay and Willis Street each day. And on each street, up to 50% of people are moving on foot, and there are a similar amount travelling on buses, but fewer than 10% of the people who move through Lambton Quay are in cars. While fewer people move through Manners Street and Courtenay Place each day, which is about 40,000, these roads are also heavily used by people on buses, 50 to 70%, and about 30% of people who are walking. People in cars are about 20% of the people using Courtenay Place. So that's currently, and what you can see is that car use in both situations is lower than what you're seeing around walking and public transport. The relative volume of cyclists is comparatively low. So cyclists account for just over 1% or 500 people per weekday. The number is reflective of the mix of uses, with cyclists sharing road space with a large number of buses and private vehicles, as well as sections of the Golden Mile which are restricted to bus only. So we recognise with the growth we're expecting, the current transport system is starting to and will continue to have an impact on the city's livability and its economic growth. And this program is about future-proofing for economic and population growth. With the space we have, we need to deliver a more reliable transport system and also create a space that is safe for pedestrians and has amenity. So just turning now to the agreed investment objectives. So the Golden Mile SSBC was endorsed by the Planning and Environment Committee of this council on the 27th of October 2021. And the investment objectives were confirmed in that SSBC. So they are about improving bus reliability, so reducing the amount of time in the schedule, and Metlink can probably explain that better than I can, improving convenience and comfort for people waiting to board buses, reducing injuries, allowing for more pedestrianisation and creating an attractive space. So that's what the program's been working to for this project. Of course, on the Golden Mile, there are some regional benefits. For example, improving bus reliability on the Wellington bus spine supports bus connections to the Hutt and Porirua, and employment in the CBD is expected to increase by 17% by 2036, so increasing to about 112,000 people or a little more, and they will experience improved travel and public space as a result of what's proposed. So now I'm going to turn to Selwyn. Selwyn's just going to talk a little about the benefits, particularly for those who weren't in the conversation the other day.
Great. Thanks. Sorry, thanks, Sarah. And just for everyone, information, I'm the team leader of the consultant team that supports development of the Golden Mile project, and I do have a number of helpers here today to help with any questions that I can't answer straight off the top of my head. This slide is a summary of what we presented on Friday for those that could attend. It summarises the benefits that we were able to calculate in accordance with Waka Kotahi's manual for calculating benefits and costs for projects. For those that weren't here on Friday, we calculated this benefit cost ratio, or BCR, for the approval of the benefit of the business case, as Sarah just mentioned before. And that was done in accordance with Waka Kotahi's rules, essentially for calculating benefits. And the reason why Waka Kotahi calculates benefits is to be able to ensure that it is moving forward with economically efficient projects, and it can also compare projects together as well that are similar. So following the rules was exactly what we did. We also had our BCR peer reviewed at the time. What we have done since the business case, though, we have updated those values up there to reflect the latest values or factors in Waka Kote's manual. So the change in BCRs, for those that have noted that since the business case, to the one that's in front of you, which is 5.2, is because we've recalculated in accordance with those rules that Waka Kote has recently come out with. Another aspect of those rules is that we need to calculate BCRs under different assumptions and different scenarios. So we did do that, and we ran a number of sensitivity tests as well. Those sensitivity tests had our BCR ranging from 6.1 to 2.3, so well above the BCR 1 mark, which is quite crucial for Waka Kote's investment decisions. So we did that, and for those that want to know, our BCRs are calculated at 4% discount rate over a 40-year evaluation period. So in terms of the benefits that we calculated, so we take into account the costs, both construction and maintenance costs. We also take into account the disbenefits. So up there on the screen in front of you will be the disbenefits associated with car travel times. The benefits that we did calculate include emission reductions, health benefits, public transport benefits, and pedestrian benefits as well. So I won't necessarily read all those out, but I will say that over a 40-year period, the expected net present value economic benefits are over $700 million. So moving to the next slide, a number of benefits we didn't count as part of that business case, and we didn't do that because one of the rules about calculating BCRs for business cases is that you need to have clear data in front of you. So we didn't calculate all of the benefits. So that included some public transport benefits from signal coordination, and we've designed that through our latest detailed design work as well. So we have a much better idea of those green waves that will support buses in the future. We didn't count future benefits around cyclists because we were uncertain a couple of years ago around what those benefits might be. Also some pedestrian widening and conflicts between different modes. Some of the benefits from increasing mobility for mobility impaired, as well as some of the retail benefits as well from increased footfall. So we didn't count those, but we would suggest that they are absolutely benefits that we take into consideration when we move forward with this project as well. That's it, Sarah, from me.
Thank you. All right. One of the things we've certainly understood from you is your concern for business, particularly during construction. And so what we have wanted to talk about today is just to give you a little information about the support that will be provided through our contracting. So our contractor needs to provide access to businesses during trading hours, ensure that businesses can retrieve and receive their deliveries, ensure transport routes are obstruction-free and well signposted, keep an open communication with businesses and be available to adjust or work in with them for disruptive or noisy works. Active dust suppression is, of course, important. Keeping our sites safe and tidy and maintaining security and hoardings is important. Ensuring that we have secure and locked equipment at night. Ensuring laydown areas, sites, sheds and storage don't block views or access into business, and ensuring adequate lighting. Now, those things will happen as of normal matter of course, if you like, but we recognise and understand your concern around further support during construction. There are a number of things that we can do. One of the things that we look at very closely is how we will stage construction, but we're also working actively with WCC, and we're nearly out the other side of some planning that will assist us in terms of the support we can provide to help businesses and bring people into the Golden Mile. So what we're looking at the moment is what kind of support can be provided as business advisory support, how we might augment the wayfinding that will be done by the contractor so that wayfinding material is as good as possible, look at business targeted communications and promotional material. So what can we do to assist businesses so that people know that they are open, able to trade? Maybe we can do some business profiling, for example. As I said, scheduling works being mindful of business needs. So we're thinking about things like what works do we do or not do over the December period? How do we make sure that those really busy and important trading times are not impeded in any way? How do we make sure that businesses have the access and the things that they need to have? And we're looking at other mitigation actions. So I just wanted to assure you really that this work is underway, that we are taking steps to minimise the impact on business, and we're working proactively with WCC so that we can be sure that we come up with a plan that's going to be as effective as possible, despite the fact we know that there will be disruption. All right, so just to close out this section, really this is just the benefits summary, if you like. I won't read through them all, but some of the benefits are obviously wider footpaths, more trees and green areas. We're going to be coordinating utilities upgrades, so we're applying a principle of hopefully dig once, making sure that any utility upgrades that need to take place happen at the same time as work that we're doing, and that will help us to ensure that we're not being disruptive on more than one occasion. Also making sure that we're communicating well, particularly our story around our the mana whenua designs, and ensuring that we don't disrupt bus travel through the city during construction, which of course is very important if you're looking for mode shift. So now just turning to the costs of the Golden Mile revitalisation, and I know you have an important decision to make next week, so we're very much aware of that and wanting to make sure you have all the information you need. We have revised the cost estimate, and that reflects detailed design work. So we've come along with the design, obviously, in terms of where we've got to in the stage of design. We know that across New Zealand we've all experienced construction cost inflation, so that's been provided for. There have been some scope changes and also value engineering. So just so that you're aware, some of the cost pressures have come about because of the extended landscape. So what we're delivering for the Golden Mile is not curb to curb, it's building to building. So that increased scope. And those construction price increases are about 25%, and that is consistent with what's been happening around New Zealand. With value engineering, we've looked to reduce the traffic management contingency. We have reduced the depth of landscape gardens. We've rationalised paver design and colours and amended furniture quality and type. There were some options that were explored as a part of this work, and the board of Let's Get Wellington Moving has considered those, but at this point the option remains to deliver the projects as they stand scoped, but there were considerations looking at the increased cost of whether all of the zones are delivered or not. But where we have landed is an increase in costs from the SSBC. So that is an increase from 96 million to 130 million at this stage in design, or at the detailed design stage, I should say, at a P50. So that's where the 50% probability is that cost would come in or under budget, and at P95, which gives you more certainty that costs will come in or under budget. In the SSBC in October 21, we planned for 112 million, and now that is 139 million. We've also recalculated the benefits, as you're aware, because Waka Kotahi have updated their benefits model, and so the total monetised benefits have increased from the SSBC from a benefit cost ratio of 4.6 to a benefit cost ratio with detailed design of 5.3. So Given the high benefits associated with the Golden Mile, options to reduce the number of zones were not adopted by the program board, accepting that you have a decision to make as Wellington City Council, as a partner for the program, because it wasn't considered that they would deliver the outcomes in mode change, safety and commercial benefits throughout the primary corridor, and that quality reductions would result in a lower aesthetic quality and diminish the perceived value of investment. All right, so what I'd like to do now is turn to Sean Jami, who is online. Sean is going to talk about construction in the central city. He's also going to talk more specifically about the design changes that have been made recently and summarise the design. So, Sean.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to speak to you today. Yes, project delivery, design summary and a recap from the consultation the August, September last year, and I'll touch on the accessibility elements also.
Are you okay, Sean? Can you see the slides?
I think he's frozen.
Have you got me now?
Yep.
Yes, yep.
Okay, let me know if I freeze again.
That's fine. Just let us know when you'd like us to change the slide for you.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll start from the top a little bit.
Oh dear.
Okay, that's not going to work.
I tell you what I'll do. I'll try and be Sean, but we have lots of experts in the room who can help you. So we'll see how we go. So with construction, the delivery of the Golden Mile project will be integrated with the Wellington City Council City and Transition Plan. There are three elements that includes, so development response, ensuring the city can function, business support, supporting businesses through transition. I've talked about that a little, so we're very aware of that, and communications and engagement. So how do we take Wellingtonians on the journey? And as we approach construction, we will have more plans to share with you, and as we confirm the business support arrangements, we'll be able to share those plans further. So I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, right. So I'll just talk a little about how we amended the design. You remember we went out in July and August 2022 and sought feedback on design. And we recently released the report when we did the recent consultation on traffic resolutions on the response to that feedback. So our amendments to produce a more efficient bus network with optimised bus stop locations and custom-focused stops integrated into the streetscape. So we reviewed the location of bus stops based on feedback. We looked at the movement network for people on bikes and scooters on a dedicated cycleway, shared spaces and on street that connects to the wider network, and we reviewed and made changes to cycle and scooter provisions. We looked at existing crossings and they have been improved, and new crossings have been added to improve permeability and universal accessibility. So we've designed footpath surfaces to help the visually impaired and wheelchair users, and provided low profile curbs and optimal 4 metre areas along the Golden Mile frontages for emergency vehicle access. We have increased the amount of loading zones from what is currently 43 metres to 63 metres, with a decrease on the Golden Mile but an increase on the side streets. And we've incorporated input from mana whenua so that designs align with the cultural narrative of Te Ara Tupua, the ancient pathway, and associated with Tupua, Ngāke and Whatatai. So I'll just talk a little bit about, and I know Councillor Pennant, you were asking me at the Regional Transport Committee some of these questions, so I just wanted to give you a little more information. We're very happy to answer further though. So the maximum, with the new design and the amendments, the maximum distance between stops is 600 metres. And if you think of obviously between stops, the walking distance for that is 300 metres either way. So the most you will walk to a bus stop is 300 metres. So we calculate that at 1.4 metres a second, and so overall it's about a 3.5 minute walk. The Lambton Quay David Jones stop is not being removed, but it is being relocated 100 metres south to the other side of Panama Street. And this move was undertaken to provide sufficient room for cycle path and also to mitigate the conflict between cyclists, pedestrians and bus passengers, so you don't get all of that stuff happening together. This allows for the build-out and separation of the bus waiting area and the provision of upgraded shelters. The distance between Lambton North, so Supreme Court, and the Lambton Mid-Block is 470 metres, with customers not having to walk any more than 235 metres from the nearest stop at any point. And the distance from the mid-block to the next downstream stop is 400 metres, with customers being no more than 200 metres from the nearest stop at any point. And it's worth noting that the mid-block and the Willis Street stops are the highest utilised stops on the Golden Mile, which is quite interesting, not what I would have thought. Also we have Metlink here who can answer any further questions about location of stops, and we're happy to do that in question time. But I hope that provides a little more information for you. Okay, so I'll move now to, there we go, to the design summary. And Sean was going to speak to this, so forgive me if I'm not as good as that. Are you happy to? Yep. Look, we've got, what I'll do is I'll speak to it, but we also can answer questions, which I think is the most effective way. So we do have new pedestrian areas outside of the above movement zone, including 95 new seats, 3 new artworks designed by Mana Whenua, 2 kai tables, 2,000 square metres of green space, so gardens and lawns, and 61 new trees. We have new non-slip pavers that were co-designed with Mana Whenua, and obstacles within 4 metres of buildings are to be removed wherever possible to create a clear movement zone. A new 3 metre wide two-way path for people on bikes and e-scooters from Whitmore Street to Lambton Quay. So their intersection to the Lambton Quay Panama Street intersection will be in place, and 2 bus stop locations, including a pair of southbound and northbound bus stops, as I've described, with indented bus bays. The existing road carriageway will be converted to a 2-way road carriageway. Both lanes are to be special vehicle lanes for buses and authorised vehicles. And I know you've been looking at the traffic resolutions, so you'll understand the authorised vehicle piece. Closure of the Lambton Quayside road ends of Balance, Stout, Waring-Taylor, Johnson, Brandon and Panama Streets is planned. Side ends are to be generally designed to include new paving and vegetation and green spaces. Side road parking layouts will be amended to provide for mobility parking, taxi and ride-share parking and loading zones, as well as for private motor vehicle parking. Some side roads will be converted to 2-way from existing 1-way, and new loading zones for commercial vehicles longer than 6 metres will be provided on Lambton Quay so long as you have a permit. Okay, so next section. So on this section was your Willett Street section. The footpath will widen at the existing northbound bus stop location. The existing northbound bus stop is retained. No new bus shelter is planned due to space restrictions. The existing road carriageway is retained. The existing northbound lane will be converted to a special vehicle lane for buses, cycles and authorised vehicles. There's no provision for cycles on southbound Willis Street. There's just not enough room. Existing indented loading zones on the eastern side of Willis Street are to be replaced with pavers. The Mercer Street side end, the Willis Street end, will be closed, including removal of the existing right-hand turn movement from Willis Street, except for cycles, and the new side road end will include paving and vegetation and green space. The new parking layout for Mercer Street, including provision for mobility parking, motorcycle parking, a loading zone and for private motor vehicles, will be on a new two-way Mercer Street, and the northbound loading zone on Willis Street for commercial vehicles is going to be longer than 6 metres. So let's move to the next section, which is Willis Manus. The reconfigured south and northbound bus stop locations at Manners and Cuba Street are in place. The closure of Manners and Lower Cuba Street intersection is planned. Side ends are designed to include new paving. Side road parking layouts will be amended to include mobility parking, taxi and rideshare parking and loading zones for commercial vehicles less than 6 metres, as well as for private motor vehicle parking. And two-way access to Lower Cuba Street will be from a reconfigured Wakefield Lower Cuba Street intersection, new side road end to include new paving. And the existing carriageway will be retained as special vehicle lanes for buses and authorised vehicles only, and the existing right-hand turn movement from Manners into Lower Cuba Street will be removed. And the Courtney Place section. So on Courtney Place, new pedestrian areas outside of the above movement zone include 40 new seats, 530 square metres of space available for outdoor dining, a kai table, 1,100 square metres of green space, so gardens and lawns, and 66 new trees. The space will be paved with non-slip pavers, co-designed with mana whenua. Obstacles within 4 metres of building, again, will be removed where possible to create a clear movement zone. There will be a reconfigured northbound and southbound bus stop location near the Kent-Cambridge intersection. The existing road carriageway is to be converted to a two-way road carriageway to the west of the indented bus stop bays. Both lanes are to be special vehicle lanes for buses and, again, authorised vehicles. The existing southern side of Courtney Place service lane, generally located between Kent-Cambridge and Allen Street intersections, will be configured to be a part-time shared space for people on bikes and e-scooters. So apparently it'll look a little similar to Lombard Lane in character. The 3 metre wide two-way space for people on bikes and e-scooters on the southern side of Courtney Place will be located between Allen Street and Taranaki Street. The side ends of Blair and Allen with Courtney Place are closed for most vehicles with electronic bollards, so that some can have two-way access, but two-way access is to be via the Wakefield Street intersection. Some authorised vehicles will be able to travel from Allen and Blair Street into Courtney Place to the Kent-Cambridge intersection. Side road parking layouts are to be amended to provide for mobility parking, taxi and rideshare parking and loading zones for vehicles less than 6 metres, as well as for private motor vehicle parking. And side enclosures are designed to include new paving. The north-south through traffic, so that's all vehicles at the Torrey Street Courtney Place intersection, are provided for. Turning movements from Torrey Street into Courtney Place will be prohibited. New loading zones for commercial vehicles 6 metres or longer will be okay, provided a permit is obtained. Okay, so now just moving on to the design summary. So the accessibility design elements are really important, and we acknowledge that, and we're very grateful to the disability groups that have helped us with our planning. For public transport, the feedback we have had on accessibility design elements is there's general support for proposed bus stop spacing and for provision of direct access for mobility impaired. All bar one of those bus stops will allow level boarding and have a specified wheelchair user shelter, and all stops and intersections will have tactile ground surface indicators. Although distance may be longer, other measures will reduce wait times. With parking, there will be an additional 7 accessible car parks, and 1 in Courtney Place will be removed. With pedestrian mobility, there will be 4 metre obstruction-free paths, as I've explained, wherever possible, and the removal of side roads and reduction in carriageway widths will also increase the ease of access for all pedestrians, including mobility impaired. With street furniture and infrastructure, we have looked at design features that are problematic for some groups and made sure that we're avoiding those. And the authorisation system allows for provision of access for permits for various classes of use including persons with special circumstances access. The team, as I said, have really consulted with disability advocacy groups through the course of the project from the SSBC to now. And the team have also undertaken disability audits of the project, and most recently during the develop design phase. Disability groups contributed to design guidance that's been incorporated into the design process, including suggestions on the layout of infrastructure and the design and placement of elements. So disability groups also talk to us about the maintenance of the current bus stop spacing and for provision of direct access for mobility impaired to the Golden Mile. And that's why we were upgrading all stops except for the Willis Street one to have Kessel curbs to allow level boarding for buses. And all bus stops and intersections will have the tactile ground surface indicators that are beneficial for those with mobility impairment.
Sarah, apologies.
Sorry.
I'm just a
I
bit
know
weary.
it's quite
A bit wary of time, and
Certainly.
and you've got a lot of detail there, and that's much appreciated. And I think this is for officers too. But given the decision on the Golden Mile is next week, and it is highly controversial for us.
It is.
I'd actually like to dedicate the rest of the session
Of
to
course.
questions,
Yes.
and they'll be aimed at yourselves as well as our officers as well. And I would recommend that we circulate this presentation to councillors by the end of the day, so we can digest it and kind of
Certainly.
yeah.
We can circulate them electronically
Would
to
that-
you, and that will be.
Would you mind doing that tonight or this
We
afternoon?
can absolutely do that. That's no problem at all.
Wonderful, thank you. Because
No
we're
problem.
deeply passionate about this project.
I know you are, so I'm very, very happy to help. And I'm apologies. I just was, I guess, trying to preempt some of the questions that you might have had because I knew that accessibility and some of those changes were really important to you.
No, that came through really clear, especially with accessibility, so thank you for that. So I'm going to take a speaking list. Yep, free. Yeah, oh, yep, pretty much everyone. Yep. Yes. Okay.
Hey.
Okay, I have two. So just kind of back to construction of the Golden Mile. So I know we're looking at doing it at both ends. Courtney Place is the end that needs it the most. So I just want some, not clarification, but the kind of the reasoning behind starting on Lambton Quay.
Okay, certainly. I think those plans may have shifted. So what I'd like to do, I'm not sure if Sean's still online, if his connection is any better. If
I
not,
can try just the acoustic if you like, as opposed to the video.
yes, please, that would be great. Thank you.
To answer your question, we're doing a lot of work at the moment trying to, if anything, would be to define the scope. As with any brownfield civil construction, 80% of the work is in the ground, and a big piece of it is trying to understand how our intrusive elements and our hard stand what it would mean in terms of the infrastructure. So whilst we did look at Lambton Quay initially as stage one or a start, right now that could see a shift back to Courtney Place, and we'll be able to confirm that, I'd say, in the coming months back to councillors once we understand a bit more about that underground scope.
Okay, thank you. I'll actually remove my next question. Councillor Brown. Well, that makes it easier. Can we keep it to two questions for now, and then we'll do another round if we need to, just so everyone gets a turn. Councillor Pannett.
Thank you for being receptive. So look, sorry, that was a lot of detail. How many bus stops have been removed? Yeah, and where are they? If you could just go over that again.
I'll ask Rowan to answer the question.
Thank you, Councillor. 5 bus stops are proposed for deletion. Those are the pair at St James's Theatre, the corner of Courtney Place and Taranaki, the corner of Manners and Willis. That is an
Yeah, so we have
Sure.
to write this down. This is actually, we're going to a meeting tomorrow where we're going to be talking about, we just actually do need to know.
I understand.
So the two at St James, Manners, Willis.
Manners and Willis. There's a single stop northbound on the corner there. The cable car. Manners and Willis, that's correct. Yep. The cable car stop and in the southbound direction, Lambton Quay South. It's called a Hunter Street stop.
Sorry.
Lambton Quay South, so in the narrow section of Lambton Quay, approaching the corner of Stuart Dawson's Corner.
Sorry, the Hunter Street one?
It's defined as the Hunter Street stop because it's approximate to Hunter Street, but it's actually on Lambton Quay.
Okay.
Just before you get to the Old Bank Arcade.
Yeah, okay. Which I don't like, that stop. Then my second question is, I don't like this, and I've been really clear about this right from the start. So what is the implication if we put them back to the cost-benefit ratio and the deliverability of the project? Thank you.
Okay. So stop rationalisation is undertaken to improve reliability and journey time along the mile. For every bus stop, a bus needs to slow down, decelerate, stop, dwell, accelerate again, and re-enter traffic. Each time that occurs, it impacts the overall runtime and reliability of the service. Stops account for about 25% of the total runtime along the Golden Mile. So in order to improve reliability and runtime, which translates to the customer as essentially more buses arriving more frequently at bus stops, it's the name of the game, stop rationalisation forms a critical part of that. Some of the stops that I've cited are actually key bottlenecks on the network, in particular the Manners Willis Street stop there. It is located immediately adjacent to a set of signals. And in practice...
The library outside the library.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a transport planner. I think in terms of street names. That stop is immediately adjacent to a set of signals, and therefore it essentially throttles back the movement of buses through that intersection to one bus per cycle. As customers come up, await to be boarding, they miss the cycle, and then it's one bus. So essentially, the more stops you have, and the location of those stops ultimately influences the performance of buses along the mile, which results in vehicle platooning, large numbers of buses queuing up with long durations between buses arriving at stops, which means you've got greater numbers of people waiting at the stop, and it compounds itself.
Have to wait longer at the fewer stops.
No,
right,
buses will arrive more frequently at fewer stops. So there will be more people attending those stops, but they will be served by buses more often.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
My one's on the accessibility issue. The more car parks are extremely appreciated. However, what I've heard very strongly from disabled people is that they're getting dropped off. Could we, sort of a similar question to Councillor Panner, even though I disagree with her about the bus stops, is could we just do permitted, make authorised everybody that holds a mobility park and all total mobility providers? Could we do that, and what impact does that have on the program?
So in practical terms, one of the things that's been considered when we've been developing the system has been how you can tell whether somebody's authorised or not. And the current thinking is that would be done with cameras that would read number plates. And so one of the challenges with saying that you would authorise everybody that had a mobility permit is that the permit goes with the person rather than the vehicle. And I suspect that what you'd end up with to make it so that you could tell who was authorised in the corridor or not was they'd still need to apply and say, I'm coming in there and for that reason, because the permit goes with the people, not the vehicle.
But you could say have a mobility card holder register a certain number of vehicles that they use.
That would be possible, and it would just mean more vehicles in the corridor, and you'd be harder to regulate, but it would be possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, so my question is about the cost-benefit analysis. So you said there was a saving in public transport travel time, but there's a 3.5-minute extra average walk on, because they're going to be spaced out further. Has that been calculated in with the travel time?
I don't think it's extra.
Yeah, that 3.5 minute is the longest possible walk. It's not the average walk, but there would be an increased walk time associated with stop rationalisation.
And has that been factored into your cost benefit? Because there's a very low benefit actually for these public transport benefits are quite low.
Danielle, are you online? Are you able to answer that question?
Yeah. So the increased walking time for people walking to the bus stops has not been included in the cost benefit analysis, purely because it's so sensitive as to where they're coming from, and the walk time will differ based on everyone's specific origins and which stop they're going to and which stop they will have to go to in the future. So it has not been included in the current cost benefit analysis. But I would say that, with the BCR being as high as it is, if we did include it, it wouldn't materially impact the overall result.
So, just Councillor Free, just to be really clear, it's not an extra 3.5. It's actually about an extra 30 seconds for most of the stops that we have made changes to.
Okay. I did hear someone say 3.5 minutes.
That's right. The 3.5 minutes is the 300-metre walk between the stops on Lambton Quay, and they were specific stops, which is the largest distance you would have to walk on Lambton Quay to get a bus stop.
If I could perhaps add to that and qualify that, the largest difference is actually between Manners and Willis and Cuba Street. That removal of that stop to the next one up in Willis Street northbound is about 600 metres, but I would note on Willis Street in the northbound direction there is a stop about 70 metres around the corner. So in practice, if you wanted to go up Lambton Quay or up the Golden Mile in the northbound direction, you'd probably use that stop.
My other question is really how much has this design been compromised by trying to fit the cycleway in, which I did support, but I'm starting to wonder if the whole design has been slightly compromised by, inline bus stops, for example, rather than being able to recess them. How much has the design been compromised by trying to fit the cycleway in down in Lambton Quay?
I can address the inline stops at least. There's no net increase in the number of inline stops on the Golden Mile. We are removing 2 inline stops and adding 2 at Lambton mid-block.
Yeah, and in terms of inline stops particularly, the cycleway actually veers off and goes down Panama Street before the main one on Lambton Quay, so that one wouldn't be affected. And the northernmost extent, so outside the Supreme Court, we have those out. They're not in line anyway, so that's not affected. So it's really doesn't have a major impact on the bus stops. Obviously, it's 3.5 metres worth of space that is used for cyclists, but in most of the locations where that cycleway is, we've got quite a lot of space to play with once we start looking at some of the other changes. So I think it's not dramatically reduced or created any pinch points in pedestrian movements either. Obviously, there's some fine tuning you need to do around how pedestrians and cyclists merge and cross at pedestrian crossings, etc. But those have all been worked through.
One more about cyclists.
Sorry,
Okay,
we've just got too much of a list. Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. My first lot of questions just about cost. You discussed the cost pressures on the program. What about the cost pressures on the partners in terms of affordability? How have you factored that in?
So, obviously, the partnership board has met and had those discussions, and so you have delegated partner representation on the board. They landed on, as I said, there were some compromises in benefits if you went down the route of, say, only doing certain parts of the work, etc. And so where they landed was that it was appropriate to come back to you and ask for the additional funding for these projects. And you'll remember, I think from last time, that the board has also landed on prioritising these projects over the city streets work, and that there are a small amount of city streets projects that may need to be thought about again, and also some that may have some reduced scope, but that is not yet fully decided, because what will happen is we will complete to business case, and then those decisions will be made once the benefits are better understood of each of those projects.
Yeah, but with all due respect, the board is made up of officers, not of governors. So,
yes, I understand.
So just let me. So I just want to understand is how have you brought this back to, from a governance perspective, to the governors of the three partners in terms of us being able to provide a view and make a decision on what we think, as the governing body, what we think is appropriate and what we think the city can bear.
So,
Councillor Calvert, I can answer that. That decision's coming to you on the 29th of June.
Okay. And the other thing, I just want to clarify costs, because you referred to this, the business case back in October, November 2021. Unless I'm looking at the wrong document, what I see is the cost preferred option was 84.9 million with a 95 percentile cost of 101 million. You, in your presentation here, have said that's 100. It was 112 million.
Okay,
so I'm just trying to.
CFO to help you with that.
Yeah, I mean, you can come back to me, but I'm just like, from what you're saying here. Is like this, so basically you were saying an expected cost, which is why we made which is why the decision was made on the basis of 84.9 million, and now you're saying it's probably 139 million.
I can come back to you, Councillor Calvert, but one of the other things is that the cost presentations in the SBC were just done with implementation costs, and what I've tried to do in terms of presenting the paper for the council paper coming up is also to include the monies that had already been approved for the SSBC phases and the pre-implementation phases, so that when you're actually considering the project, you're understanding the full investment that has been made in this project rather than just the next phase.
But this next phase is the construction and the maintenance.
Yes, whereas in the SSBC, when those costs would have been presented, they would have just been presenting that implementation portion.
I think the other thing to remember, Councillor Calvert, is that it's not unusual for costs to change when you get more detail on design. So we've seen that. That's not unusual. We've had the inflation, the 25% inflation.
Look, I understand, but we're talking about an 18-month period, and we're talking about being able to make a decision.
I think we'll just need to move on to the final question. Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah. Kia ora, just two from me. During the submissions last week, we heard a lot about Manners Mall and how that's not as conducive as it might be to the package, and a lot of fear around how that will look. So how would we say we are mitigating that outcome that's happened at Manners Mall through this project?
Something that Dan, would you like to?
Yes, I'm not sure I quite.
So basically, there is a common conception around Manners Mall, and it's probably fair to say that there are some views about how it's not that wonderful. Could you talk about the design elements that will ensure the project presents differently?
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Good explanation.
Thank you, Si. So I think there's quite a transformational outcome certainly on Courtney Place. Courtney Place, as a whole, we've looked at how we can really encourage a 24-hour or extend the life and vitality of Courtney Place throughout the day. At the moment, there's a lot of evening eating and drinking and so forth. It's one of the sunniest places in Wellington, and that sun is not actually captured. So if you do the sort of sun shade studies, we've got public toilets and things in those areas that get a lot of sun. So what we've tried to do is encourage and create space for outdoor dining, for those businesses there to spill out. So what was space for toilets, etc., or that drop-off area, is creating really vibrant pieces of public realm. The other benefit we've done is through the orientation of the street, really connected it into the Embassy Theatre, so that rather than being hidden behind a whole lot of infrastructure, is really celebrated as the full stop at the end of Courtney Place. Now that's a visual connection, but also it starts to, now that St James is reopened, you're really starting to get that theatre and get those sort of other uses to really come back in. So I think there's an opportunity on Courtney Place for it to fundamentally change and create a really vibrant place to eat throughout the day, not during the evening on its own. We've worked with businesses. I think I've met 50 independent businesses on one-on-one sessions along there and actually talked to them about what would be good for them. So obviously there's concerns around private vehicle removal, but there's also a lot of positive feedback we've had around that outdoor dining space, around that area that we're creating. We've been talking to police around reducing clutter, creating space that you can actually see across the road, creates places that are attractive and safe. And it's the same with Lambton Quay. We've removed vehicle space and created green infrastructure. So we're planting a whole lot more native trees. We're directing water to garden beds rather than straight down drains and into the sea. So there's a whole lot of improvements, but I think the critical one is that vitality. And the difference between Manners Mall and both the areas that we're looking at is the width of the streets. So we've got these spaces that are wide. We can introduce green planting and vitality of people. Manners Mall is quite tight. You've got tight pedestrian area and you've got buses moving through it. That's the same on Willow Street. But when you get out to Lambton Quay and Courtney Place, we get to points where we've got about 40 metres width in some of those streets. So we can actually create spaces that people want to spend time in. So that's probably the difference.
We're going to have to wrap this up soon, but there's still lots and lots of questions. So I'm going to talk to officers about how we address that, given the importance of this project.
Sorry, Mayor Whanau, just to assist you, we'd be very happy. Sorry. We'd be very happy to receive a list of questions and we could respond to those in plenty of time for your decision next week.
Thank you.
But I could ask questions right here and now and short answers. I don't want to spend the next 3 or 4 days waiting for a response. So I'm happy if you want to stay here and I'll ask you the questions directly. But I am really keen to get as much information as I can because I have been firing through questions over the last couple of weeks and are still waiting on for some responses. So I'm really keen to.
Sure. Councillor Calvert, I understand there are some responses coming to you today. I have signed them off today, so they should be coming to you today.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take the Mayor's guidance.
So we're just talking about a possible Q&A session even for tomorrow to replace a non-urgent briefing. Not to add. Let me play swapsies with tomorrow or Thursday so we can have because I agree, so in person it just might be a bit quicker. We all get to hear Thursday.
Friday. Makes sense to have the papers first from my perspective, but I don't know how other people feel.
I think
big printouts.
Yeah, because there's some. Yeah, I'm happy to quickly write my questions and fire them through so you're prepared for tomorrow.
Okay,
thank you. That would be appreciated.
I'm going to take one final question from Councillor Randall, and then we'll reorganise for tomorrow-ish.
Because we're continuing on, I'll just give you the question which I think you can come back with, because I've been looking at the BCR analysis spreadsheet, so thank you for sharing that.
Oh
no! So inside the BCR, one of the things I found interesting was the biggest single benefit is around traffic volume reduction, and there's a traffic volume reduction amount which is like -5 cents per 1,000 cars per person or something like that. And what I want to know is it has an enormous influence on the overall costs, on the overall benefits, enormous. It's actually, these benefits are 44% of all the benefits in the whole thing. So if that number goes to 1 cent, you lose $300 million worth of benefits. So it's obviously a very, very important number, and I just wanted to know where's that number from and what research supports it.
Sure. Are you able to answer that now, or do you need...
You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yeah. Sorry, Dan, are you able to respond to Councillor Randall? Just quickly.
Yeah, I guess Yeah, I guess, I mean, the response is mostly to point at the interim guidance where all of the research behind that number is located. It's based on, I think, 9 international case studies of willingness to pay values. So it might be better to provide a written response to you of that, some of that
actually,
backing
put it to you
information.
because I wasn't expecting a response right now. I was expecting you come along and say, look, this report says this and this and this. It just has such a big influence that I think I'd just like to understand it better. Thanks.
So what I'm going to propose now is if we could circulate this material this afternoon. Or
We will
after
do
this.
that straight away.
Beautiful, thank you. And councillors, take some time to review so you come armed with questions which Jennifer and Moana are just trying to organise now. Thank you.
We have some maps that we can.
Some maps would be fabulous, but, you know, look, I know it's a big ask, but, you know.
No, it's absolutely fine. You have an important decision to make and we want to help you as much as possible.
True. To be fair. No, great. Okay, in that case, I thank you for your time and for taking some of our tricky questions. Be prepared tomorrow, because it'll probably be the similar time. But look,
do you have an indication of when tomorrow?
I just need to check that there's not something urgent that I don't know about, but probably replacing the Cultural Heritage Strategy Workshop tomorrow.
Oh. which is
9:30 a.m. to 10:30.
We'll come back to you.
We'll come back. It'll be
after this meeting too.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
It's just